Hello, darling. Tonight's story reminds us that not every nightmare wears the face of a monster. Some horrors never speak. They never chase. They never make themselves known until they've already been watching for far longer than you could ever imagine. Because tonight's tale isn't about ghosts. It's about the kind of fear that could be standing just across the street, patiently waiting for you to notice. So settle in, come closer, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let me tell you a story. Tonight's reading is The Man Who Never Spoke. People always ask me if I believe in ghosts. I usually tell them no. The things that scare me the most have always been people. This happened almost 8 years ago, back when I taught dance 3 evenings a week outside of a small studio apartment at the edge of town. During the day, I worked in an office downtown, and dancing was simply the thing that made me feel alive. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd leave work, throw my hair into a ponytail, and spend hours teaching the children and adults everything from beginner's ballet to contemporary. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved every second of it. That's probably why I didn't notice him at first. The first time I saw him, he was standing across the street when I looked up after class. And he wasn't doing anything strange. He simply stood behind a streetlight with his hands in his pockets. When I glanced over, he looked away. I got into my car and drove home. That was it. A week later, he was there again. Same streetlight. Same dark jacket. Same posture. Again, I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he lived nearby. The human mind is wonderful at explaining away uncomfortable things. Then I saw him outside the grocery store. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't carrying bags. He simply stood near the entrance, watching people leave. As I walked past, I felt his eyes follow me. When I looked back, he wasn't pretending to browse his phone or look elsewhere. He was simply watching me, expressionless. I hurried to my car. By the time I'd put away my groceries and looked up again, he was gone. A few days later, a single white rose appeared on my windshield after dance class. No note, no card. Just the flower tucked beneath the windshield wiper blade. One of the moms laughed, teased me about having a secret admirer. I laughed too. But something about it didn't feel romantic. It felt wrong. The following week, there were 2 roses. Then 3. Always white. No note. Always waiting on my car. I asked everyone I knew. No one claimed them. Eventually, they stopped. For almost a month, nothing happened. I convinced myself I'd imagined the entire thing. Then, one Saturday morning, I walked out of my apartment. Someone had drawn a heart on the dust covering the rear window of my car. Inside, it had 2 words. I wait. I wiped it away immediately. I wish I hadn't. Looking back, I wish I'd photographed everything. Instead, I kept telling myself there had to be a logical explanation. That afternoon, I mentioned it to my older brother. He didn't laugh. He asked one question. Have you told the police? I told him there wasn't anything to report. He stared at me. Jazz. His voice was calm. You don't wait until something happens. I promised I'd keep an eye out. I never actually called. A few days later, I noticed the silver sedan. At first, it seemed like a coincidence. I'd see it parked outside work, then outside the dance studio, then at a gas station across town. Always the same car, always parked, never moving, never close enough to prove anything. I couldn't even make out the driver's face because the windshield reflected the sky. After nearly 2 weeks of seeing it everywhere, I decided to test my imagination. Instead of driving home, I made 6 random turns through unfamiliar neighborhoods. Left, right, right again, across town, and then back towards downtown. Finally, I pulled into a crowded shopping center. The silver sedan rolled slowly into the parking spot less than a minute later. It parked 3 rows away. No one got out. I left immediately. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I finally called the non-emergency police line. The officer who came to my apartment was kind, but honest. Without a license plate or a direct threat, there wasn't much that they could do. He advised me to document everything. So I did. Dates, times, locations, flowers, notes, the silver car, the man beneath the streetlight, everything. For almost 2 months, the notebook grew thicker. The sightings became more frequent, sometimes twice a day, sometimes 5, always from a distance, always silent, never approaching, and somehow that made it worse. It felt patient, calculated, as though he enjoyed waiting until I noticed him. One rainy Thursday after class, I reached my car carrying an umbrella in one hand and my dance bag in the other. Something immediately felt wrong. The driver's seat was farther back than I had left it, only by an inch or two, just enough. I stopped breathing. Very slowly, I looked through every window. Nothing. My keys trembled in my hand. I unlocked the door and searched the interior. Nothing appeared missing. Then, I noticed a folded up piece of paper resting in the center console, with only 5 handwritten words. You look beautiful tonight. I dropped the note. My hands refused to stop shaking. Police dusted the car. No fingerprints. No visible evidence. One officer quietly asked if I'd perhaps forgotten leaving the note myself. I almost laughed. Instead, I cried. The next few weeks became a blur. Friends walked me to my car. My brother installed cameras outside of my apartment. Coworkers made sure I was never left alone. The sightings stopped. For nearly 6 weeks. Nothing. Life began returning to normal. I started smiling again, sleeping again, breathing again. Until one Friday evening, dance class had run late. Everyone left around 10. Everyone left one by one. The parking lot emptied until only my car remained. As I locked the studio door, I heard a metallic click. My driver door slowly opened by itself. I knew I locked it. I always locked it. The interior light glowed softly against the darkness. Someone was inside. I couldn't see who. Just a shape. My body refused to move. Then the figure climbed out. The same dark jacket. The same height. The same man. For the first time, he smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not an angry one. Just satisfaction. Like someone finally meeting a lifelong goal. He took one slow step toward me. Then another. I ran. I didn't scream. I didn't think. I simply ran back into the dance studio and slammed the deadbolt. My fingers barely worked well enough to dial 911. I remembered whispering instead of shouting, "Please hurry." The dispatcher kept me on talking. I never looked away from the front windows. He never tried to force the door. He simply stood outside, watching, smiling, waiting. The first police cruiser arrived 4 minutes later. The man ran. Officers caught him less than 2 blocks away. He carried no weapon, no rope, no duct tape, nothing. Only a thick notebook. Page after page filled with my name. Photographs of me leaving work, leaving the grocery store, teaching dance, walking my dog, getting coffee, talking to friends. There were hundreds of entries, each dated, each describing what I'd worn, who I'd spoken to, how long I stayed somewhere. Some entries went back almost 3 years. I only noticed him for the last few months. He had been watching me for years. The detectives handed the case, told me something I still think about. He said, "Most stalkers eventually want contact, conversation, attention, recognition. Mine never did. He was perfectly happy remaining invisible, observing, collecting, waiting. Years have passed since then. I've moved, changed jobs, changed cities. My routines are completely different now. Sometimes people tease me because I always check the back seat before getting in my car, because I glance over my shoulder when I unlock the front door, because I notice the same vehicles too quickly. I don't mind. They're habits now. Little pieces of survival that stayed with me. Every now and then, when someone else asked if I'd heard from him again, the answer is no. At least, not directly. A few months after the trial ended, a package arrived at my old apartment. The new tenant tracked me down through social media and asked me if I wanted it. There was no return address, no note, nothing written anywhere on the box. Inside was a single white rose, perfectly fresh. No one ever discovered who sent it. Maybe it was a cruel prank. Maybe it was someone who had read about the case. Or maybe some people never stop watching. They're simply better at hiding. Sometimes the most frightening stories aren't the ones filled with ghosts or ancient curses. They're the ones that could happen to anyone. For years, one silent stranger watched from the shadows, collecting moments instead of memories, never needing a conversation, only patience. And even after justice was served, one final white rose was enough to leave a single question unanswered. Has it truly ended? And if you happen to notice the same stranger twice, perhaps don't wait for a third time. And thank you for spending this dark and quiet time with me, darling. Until next time, sleep soundly, if you can.